And so the prophet points out there will be a stump that will come from the branch of Jesse. Well, this is Jesus. And here's what the Holy Spirit will have to do with the Messiah. It is the Holy Spirit who will give the Messiah power and then endow him with wisdom and understanding and knowledge so that he can rightfully use that power. But that's not all. The Holy Spirit will put a pure heart within this Messiah and will also give him a thirst for righteousness, to do the right thing, and a thirst for justice as well. Why? So that he might appropriately lead his people, guide his people. There will even come a day when not only people will live in harmony with each other, but even wild animals will live in harmony with the people as well. Now that won't be the day when the Messiah comes. That will happen later. And so this prophet Isaiah is seeing not only the day when the Messiah would come, but he's seeing way beyond that as well. A day and a time when all of God's creatures will live in harmony. The lion and the lamb and the goat and the bull and all of these animals will live in harmony with each other and with us as well. So you can see this prophet Isaiah is seen way into the distance. Of course, we know that that day when all of God's creatures live in harmony, that would have to be the time when God's kingdom is fully set up and in place. Well, the Jews waited for a Messiah who would save them. And why not? God had chosen them to be his people. And he brought them through so many disasters, saved them from slavery in Egypt. And so the Jews now waited for a Messiah who would come and save them from their Assyrian bondage. Well, the Messiah was more than what the Jews themselves even looked for. Think of today as the period of time between the first coming of Jesus, his birth, between that and the second coming of Jesus. Think of the time in between that you and I are in as if it were like a maze. But we're not left to ourselves. We have access to Jesus' guidance. That's the presence of the Holy Spirit in our lives. It's your wisdom, your understanding, your knowledge, which Jesus imparts to you, that becomes amazing to us. It is your hunger for righteousness. It is your thirst for justice in this world that Jesus has planted within you. You see, the Holy Spirit planted all of those things within the Messiah, Jesus Christ himself, but it's Jesus through the power of the Holy Spirit who now implants those things within you, within yourself. God guides you today with the very characteristics that were found in Jesus himself. So let's summarize. The Holy Spirit guides us with wisdom, understanding, knowledge, righteousness, justice, the full truth of God and the full truth of humankind. These represent the road map that we are to use every day. This is how God guides us, by giving us these tools to use. Over the years, I've heard a number of people say a similar kind of thing. I suppose it can be stated in different ways, but let me just summarize it this way. It's when someone says something like, I read the Bible and try to follow its teachings. I feel like I know Jesus and how he wants to forgive me, but I'm just not sure what God's plan is for me. A number of times in my years of ministry, I've heard people say a similar thing like that. Well, here's God's plan for you. Let Jesus be the beginning of each day. Let him be the ending, the conclusion of your every day. And then you fill out the middle part of each day based on what you have come to believe about him. You see, when we think of guidance, like a river guide took us from point A to point B. And that's basically what we think of a guide, how they deliver us from one spot to another. I don't look upon God's guidance in ideally that same way. God does a lot more than simply helping us get from point A to point B. God gives us tools to use so that we use his guidance by utilizing those tools as we go from point A and point B. God gives you knowledge. There's not a single person in this room who doesn't already know enough about God to get their act together. There's not a single person who isn't at that point. We are all at that point. We know what it means to live a civilized life. We know what it means to live a sacrificial life where we're not just entirely in it for ourselves. We know what it means to utilize love and forgiveness in the lives of people around us. We know how it works, don't we? We cannot claim that we have a lack of knowledge of what our Creator created us to do and to be. We have that knowledge. There is also not a single one of us who is lacking in understanding how hard life can be for other people in particular, and that we have to give them their space, and we have to give them sometimes our assistance and our help and our support. Okay? There's not a one of us who lacks understanding. What we have instead of understanding sometimes is just our opinions that get in the way.